Before we start, a quick note about what this channel is and what it isn't. This isn't a recap channel, and it's not a highlight reel. We're here for the parts of Panem that happen after the cameras turn away, the systems behind the games, the contracts hidden inside victory, the lives that keep unfolding long after the anthem ends. Each video on this channel is built to slow things down, to follow the logic the Capitol relies on, the details it hopes you won't connect, and the people who live with the consequences year after year. If that's the kind of Hunger Games analysis you're looking for, you're in the right place. Subscribing just means you'll keep a seat here when we move on to the next story. Now, let's start where Panem always wants you to stop paying attention. Katniss Everdeen wins the Hunger Games with nightlock berries stained on her fingers, held up to a camera that beams her defiance across Panem. But then you jump forward to Victor's village, and it's not berries the Capitol sends her. It's pristine white roses on the table, on the dresser, on the pillow. So which object actually proves who really won? The poison she almost eats? Or the flowers she can't escape? At face value, everyone remembers her as the girl who beat the games, the one who outsmarted the arena, saved Peter, and forced the Capitol to break its own rules. But here's the real question. Did she ever actually have a chance to win against the system that built those rules in the first place? Or was the Capitol's victory locked in long before the cannon ever sounded for the first fallen tribute? Because Katniss survives 2 arenas, topples a regime, becomes the Mockingjay, and technically ends the games. That sounds huge. Yet there is a lot to uncover here, especially when you realize there's a specific moment where she understands she's already lost something she can't get back. Not just her father, not just Rue or Prim. Something more abstract, and in a way, more terrifying. The right to exist off camera. Is it when she volunteers for Prim and feels the cameras close in, turning her panic into a heroic narrative for every district to consume? Is it when she raises the berries with Peter, thinking it's an act of pure rebellion, only to watch the Capitol cut to black and re-edit it into a tragic love story? Is it President Snow's visit in Victor's village, when he stands in her perfect new kitchen and proves that even her supposed reward is just another set? Or is it something even later and quieter, a moment the movies barely highlight, when she understands that even her rebellion and her relationships are just more content for the show? This is where we talk about the hidden rule of the Hunger Games. You can win the arena and still lose to the Capitol. Any victor will tell you the games don't end when you win. Victor's village, the victory tour, the mandatory mentoring, the phone line straight to the Capitol. Every reward tightens the relationship between you and the people who own your image. In this video, we're going to cover how Katniss's awareness shifts over time, from hunting beyond the fence and trading in the hob, where she thinks she's slipping past the rules, to realizing that every act of survival, every kiss, every arrow is being packaged and sold back to Panem. And by the end, we'll pinpoint the exact moment she understands the Capitol doesn't need to kill her to beat her. It just needs her to keep performing. Winning isn't freedom. Why this question matters in Panem. So when does performing actually start? Not in the arena. It starts the moment you realize the Capitol has already written the script you're stepping into. To see why this question matters, you have to zoom out and compare 2 very different versions of the same nightmare. Back then, in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes era, the games are barely a show, The arena is a crumbling stadium. Tributes are dumped in a cage, starved, and marched out with no stylists, no pageantry, almost no promise of sponsors. It's raw punishment, broadcast, but not yet addictive television. Now jump forward to Katniss's world. Suddenly, the games are polished. You get a makeover team, training scores, live interviews, and a mentor whose job is to turn you from a terrified kid into a marketable narrative. At face value, that looks like progress. More food, more spectacle, more hope that if you play it right, a sponsor might send you medicine at the exact second you need it. But here's the real question. Why would a government improve the experience of its own annual mass execution? There is a lot to uncover here. Why does the capital pour resources into victors only to keep them under constant surveillance? Why build mansions for traumatized teenagers at the edge of every district, then wire their lives directly into the capital's media machine? Why turn the worst day of their lives into an annual holiday rerun, complete with highlight reels and commentary? This is where we talk about victory as a trap, not an ending. In Panem, winning the games doesn't close the book. It signs you to a lifetime contract. Your trauma becomes mandatory content on the victory tour. Your love life, real or staged, is dissected in Caesar Flickerman's studio. Your public image belongs to the capital, and every year you're dragged back as a mentor to watch new children die in the same arena that made you a victor. Victor's Village is the physical proof of that relationship. On paper, it's a reward. A mansion, full power, hot water, a stocked fridge, no more tesserae or coal dust. But look at District 12's hilltop. Those houses are set apart, overlooking the seam, close enough for every child to see the promise, too far for anyone to casually visit. It's an open-air cage, a curated suburb where victors are visible billboards, isolated from their own people, yet permanently useful to the capital's story. And that part matters because it's exactly where Katniss's sense of winning starts to fracture. She gets everything she thought she wanted: safety for Prim, food for her family, a beautiful house, even Peter across the street. Then President Snow appears in her perfect kitchen, breath smelling of blood and roses, and reminds her that none of it is actually hers. That's the seed of her realization. The moment she understands the capital doesn't lose when you win. It wins when you move into the village and keep playing your part. The capital's favorite illusion. Our core theory in one sentence is actually seeing. The capital's favorite weapon isn't mutts or whips, it's editing. Our core claim is simple. The moment Katniss realizes the capital has already won is the moment she understands that survival, romance, and even rebellion can all be re-edited into capital propaganda. You can beat the other tributes. You can outsmart the arena. But if the capital can still cut your story into a highlight reel that sells its power back to the districts, who really won the games? At face value, Victor's Village looks like the reward for beating that system. Big houses, hot water, full pantries, a straight line from coal dust to clean white sheets. It's the physical promise that if you play along, if you become a victor, you get out. But here's the real question. Out of what? Out of poverty or out of control? This is where we talk about Victor's Village as more than a rich neighborhood. We're going to cover it as a piece of psychological warfare, a set built to convince both you and your district that safety, status, and even love are things the capital can grant or revoke. depending on how well your narrative behaves. That part matters because Katniss has always known the rules are rigged. She hunts beyond the fence, she takes tesserae, she trades in the hob. She understands the game of survival. What she hasn't understood yet is that her feelings can be weaponized as content. Think about the reaping. Prim's name is drawn. Katniss volunteers, and in real time, it's horror. But the cameras don't care about the truth of that relationship. They care about the shot, the crying sister, the trembling volunteer. The clean story about Sacrifice the Capitol can replay every year as proof that the games produce heroes. Why kill hope when you can sell it? Victor's Village is the permanent version of that edit. The promise is wealth, safety, and freedom from the reaping. The reality is isolation at the edge of town, constant surveillance, and a life where every decision is pre-framed for an audience you can't see. Who do you mentor? Who do you marry? Do you smile on the victory tour? Every choice is really a multiple choice question the Capitol has already written. And it's not just Katniss. There is a lot to uncover here when you start lining up stories. Finnick turned into a pin-up, Haymitch into a joke, even dead victors rerun as inspirational footage. The system doesn't just kill people, it recycles them into programming that keeps the districts obedient. So when Snow stands in that spotless kitchen, he isn't just threatening Gale, he's revealing the real arena, the edit bay. Even if Katniss sparks a rebellion, even if she dies for it, the Capitol might still package her as a tragic love story or a cautionary tale. That's the realization we're tracking. And in a minute, we'll go back to Snow's original design for Victor's Village and the tiny, almost throwaway moment when Katniss finally understands the trap she's living in. From berries to bedrooms, how we're taking this apart. So if the real arena is the edit bay, how do we track the moment Katniss realizes she's already been cut into a story she can't control? To answer that, we need to pull back from the berries for a second and walk up the hill to those identical houses in Victor's Village. Here's the plan. First, we're going to cover the historical backstory, why Victor's Village even exists, why it only appears after the 10th games, and what that timing tells you about Snow's strategy. Then we'll shift into the psychology of it, the way this neighborhood is engineered to change how every district child thinks about the games. Finally, we'll zoom in on Katniss's personal timeline, from hunting beyond the fence to that quiet moment in her bedroom where she understands the Capitol doesn't need her dead to win, it just needs her framed correctly. So, step 1, origin story. Back then, victors were sent home with trauma and maybe a medal. No mansion, no permanent address on a private lane. So why the change? This is where we talk about the creation of Victor's Village after the 10th games, Snow's role in pushing it, and why that part matters because it turns victory from a warning into a promise. We'll look at how each district gets its own version, how the layout reinforces class division, and why District 12's half-empty, almost haunted suburb is such an outlier that it practically undercuts the sales pitch. From there, we'll get very concrete. What does daily life in Victor's Village actually look like? Full power when the rest of the district goes dark. Direct phone lines to the Capitol. Mandatory mentoring, talents, media work. At face value, it's freedom from the mines or the seam. But here's the real question. If you never really leave the games, is this a reward or a longer sentence? Midway through, we're going to pause and walk through the book versus movie design. On the page, the houses are spaced out. Haymitch's place is decaying. Katniss hides in an empty home when the fence is electrified. On screen, the village is tighter, cleaner, almost cozy. Why smooth out the rough edges? We'll dig into what those choices say about the story the films want to tell, and how moving the camera changes where you might think the capital already won moment actually sits. Because there is a lot to uncover here about adaptation. Some of Katniss's most important realizations are practically whispers in the movies. When does she really grasp the relationship between her private fear and the capital's public narrative? Is it the reaping? The victory tour? Snow in her living room? We'll track that progression. And then, at the end, we'll have a little speculative fun. If District 4's village overlooks the sea and District 2's is built into the mountain, how does that change who volunteers, who rebels, and who quietly decides the capital has already won before the cameras even roll? If you're new to the village, welcome to the games behind the games. So if you're hearing all this and thinking, wait, people actually sit around mapping out District 4's waterfront real estate? Yeah, that's what we do here. This corner of the village is for treating Panem as a real functioning country, not just a backdrop for cool arrow shots. We ask why the victor's village survives the bombing of 12, why Tesserae quietly redraw the class map of every district, why Snow keeps building suburbs for traumatized teenagers and calling it mercy. At face value, this sounds obsessive, but here's the real question. If you don't understand the systems, how do you understand the people trapped inside them? Katniss, Snow, Seneca, Coin. None of them are operating in a vacuum. They're all moving through a machine that was already humming before they were born. So this is where we talk about that machine. We're going to cover the books, the films, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and all the messy politics in between. The propaganda, the economics, the urban planning of a place that decides to put its celebrities on a hill and its starving workers in the ash below. That part matters because it changes what hope even means to someone from District 12 versus District 1. If you're new to the village and you prefer your Hunger Games content to stay on the surface, outfits, ships, who's hotter on the train, totally fair. But if you want breakdowns that treat the games as a state-run media ecosystem with budgets, zoning laws, and quarterly ratings, you're in the right district. We focus on character psychology and system design together. Why Haymitch drinks the way he does when every victor's house on that street is a reminder that he's the only one who came back from his quarter quell. Why Snow can walk into Katniss's kitchen and still feel confident he controls the narrative. Why Seneca thinks berries are a twist, not a revolution. If you want more deep dives into Tesserae economics, the social contract behind career tribute culture, or the secret rules baked into each quarter quell, you can always join the village by hitting subscribe. Think of it as volunteering, but the only arena you're entering is a playlist. There is a lot to uncover here, and we're building it episode by episode. How sponsor gifts reveal class relationships, how train routes double as supply chains, how every reward the capital offers comes with a contract you don't see on screen. So, with all that in mind, let's go back to Katniss. Let's rewind to the moment Victor's village stopped being blueprints and became Snow's favorite weapon. Because the first time she steps into that empty mansion in District 12, the capital has already done something far more dangerous than threaten her life. Snow's first draft of Forever, the birth of Victor's village. Because before Katniss ever opens that front door, Victor's village has a history, a design document. a test case. We have to jump back all the way to the 10th Hunger Games, when the arena is basically a crumbling sports stadium and the show is bombing in the ratings. The capital wants punishment. The districts feel only terror and disgust. No pageantry, no parades, no fire costumes, just children in a cage. How long can you run that before the whole thing collapses under its own cruelty? This is where we talk about Coriolanus Snow, before the roses, when he's a broke academy student scrambling for a scholarship in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. He's assigned as a mentor not because he's brilliant, but because the games are such a mess the capital is willing to experiment on them. And Snow learns something fast. Fear alone is boring. It doesn't hold attention. It doesn't sell. So why do the early changes focus on spectacle? Why add betting, interviews, sponsors, a tiny bit of romance? Because Snow realizes the games don't survive as executions. They survive as television. The moment you care who wins, you're already participating in the system that's killing them. That part matters because it's the seed of everything that comes later. But there's still a problem. Even if the capital audience is entertained, how do you stop the districts from rioting every single reaping? How do you make them send their children without constant military crackdowns? Here's the real question. How do you turn a death sentence into a dream job? At face value, it's simple. Win the games, get a mansion, endless food, hot water, full power when your district blacks out. Your family moves in. Your name is pulled from the reaping pool forever. It looks generous. It looks merciful. But we're going to cover the real function here. It's a billboard, a permanent, physical advertisement built on the edge of every district. Snow's genius is understanding the relationship between suffering and aspiration. If everyone is starving together, you get solidarity. If one person is feasting on a hill while the rest starve, you get envy, competition, and volunteers. Careers in 1 and 2 don't just train for honor, they're training for the promise of that house, that status, that immunity. By the time we reach the 74th Games, Victor's village has been standing for decades. Old enough that kids grow up pointing at those houses and asking who lives there. Normal enough that no one questions why the nicest homes in District 12 are empty ruins around Haymitch. But the origin is still there, baked into the bricks. This was Snow's first draft of Forever, a way to bribe the districts into policing themselves. So when Katniss steps into her own mansion, she isn't just walking into luxury, she's walking into a strategy that's older than she is. And the next question is brutal. What happens when the reward turns out to be another arena? Temptation architecture. How Victor's village hacks the human brain. So when Katniss walks into that mansion, the question isn't how big is the bathtub? It's what kind of brain are you trying to build in here? Because Victor's village isn't just housing, it's temptation architecture. At face value, Snow tells you the goal straight up. Tempt a better class of tributes. Not half-starved kids dragged in screaming, but teenagers who are strong, charismatic, and already know how to play to an audience. Why? Because those kids make better television, they make cleaner narratives, and they make the games feel less like an execution and more like a contest you could win if you just tried hard enough. Back then, the early games were pure punishment. You lost the war, your children die. Simple, brutal. But here's the real question. What happens when fear alone stops working? When districts are so crushed but they have nothing left to lose. That's where the promise of Victor's village slides in and quietly rewires the whole system. Winning the Hunger Games earns you a mansion, endless food, hot water on demand in a district where boiling a pot is work. That part matters because it turns the games into a grotesque scholarship program for violence. You don't just survive, you graduate into the only real upper class your district will ever see. Suddenly, training your children to fight isn't treason, it's responsible parenting. There is a lot to uncover here in the relationship between the houses and the cameras. Victor's village is not just for the tributes. It's a set. Every year, the broadcast can cut back to the same recognizable street, the same front doors, the same porch where a mentor watches new kids leave. You're not just seeing a winner, you're revisiting a character's home base, the way a show returns to its main location to ground the audience. This is where we talk about volunteering. So why even allow it? Why not force every tribute? The reason is simple. Volunteers make better TV. They're motivated. They train for years. They walk into the reaping stage already half in costume, ready to say, "I chose this, I can handle it." That line alone sells the entire games as opportunity instead of oppression. Pattern interrupt. Katniss is the exception that proves the rule. District 12 doesn't produce volunteers. That's why her stepping forward to save Prim hits so hard on camera. The Capitol can edit that into a story about love, bravery, and personal choice, all while quietly reinforcing the idea that the arena is where legends are made. And here's the real question. What does that do to a 12-year-old watching from the seam? When the nicest house in town is empty, waiting for a victor, your imagination doesn't go to revolution. It goes to winning. You don't picture burning the games down. You picture your mother in a warm kitchen, your siblings in clean clothes, Snow's promise of safety wrapped around your family. Victor's village doesn't just control bodies, it hijacks daydreams. It makes the path to a better life run straight through the arena. And once your dreams are pointed that way, what happens when the Capitol decides even those dreams belong to them? District 12, the village with no one home. Victor's village hijacks daydreams in most places. In District 12, it doesn't even manage that. At face value, District 12 is proof the system works worst where the Capitol needs it most. This is the district that almost never produces a victor. Before Katniss, no one volunteers. Not once in 74 years. Kids don't train, parents don't whisper, "Maybe it'll be you." The reaping isn't a talent show, it's a weather report for tragedy. So, when the Capitol drops a gleaming neighborhood on a hill and calls it Victor's Village, here's the real question. Who is that supposed to convince? Because the cameras never really show you the punchline. 12 has 12 houses. In the books, they're spaced out, fully wired, stocked with hot water and working appliances. A tiny suburb of abundance looking down on the seam. And for decades, only one of those mansions has a resident. Haymitch Abernathy. One traumatized, middle-aged Victor staggering between a decaying kitchen and an always full liquor cabinet. That part matters because Victor's village is meant to be a promise, but in District 12, it reads as a threat. You can walk past those empty porches and count, house by house, how many children the Capitol expected to kill before somebody finally earned them. Haymitch's loneliness is a design flaw Snow can't edit out. The Capitol wants you to see victors hosting parties, mentoring tributes, embodying that aspirational relationship to the games. Instead, 12's kids see the town drunk disappearing into a haunted mansion, a man whose reward is isolation, surveillance, and enough alcohol to stay numb. You're not thinking, I want what he has. You're thinking, if that's the best case scenario, what's the worst? And Katniss grows up in the shadow of that hill. Before she ever steps onto a train, she already knows the rules are rigged. She hunts illegally beyond an electrified fence that's conveniently never on. She takes Tesserae because starvation is a more immediate enemy than the arena. She trades at the Hob in a black market that exists only because peacekeepers look the other way when it benefits them. There is a lot to uncover here. She's learning that the capital's laws are flexible for those in power and lethal for everyone else. Victor's village isn't a dream to her. It's background set dressing for a system she's already sidestepping just to keep her family alive. So when Prim's name is called, Katniss's volunteer isn't the polished career-style move Snow wanted. It's raw panic. It's love and desperation, not ambition. The capital has to scramble to reframe it into a story. The devoted sister, the tragic romance, the girl on fire whose sacrifice proves the games still hold hope. On screen, they sell it as proof the system works. Off screen, it exposes how quickly they can edit any impulse into propaganda. And here's where we set up the contrast. In District 12, Victor's village is a ghost town with one bitter occupant and 2 new arrivals who never believed in it. But in other districts, especially the careers, those mansions do exactly what Snow intended. Kids train with those houses as their North Star. Parents raise volunteers on the promise that their child will be the one to move uphill. This is where we talk about what happens when Victor's village doesn't fail, when the capital's dream neighborhood finally finds willing tenants. The districts you never see, mid-tier villages, and invisible stories. So when we talk about Victor's village working in the career districts, we also have to admit something uncomfortable. You and I have never actually seen that. Everything we know about Panem is filtered through one girl from the seam who hates the cameras. At face value, we tour the country on the Victory Tour, but in practice we get District 11 through a train window, a speech, and a riot. We hear about 4, 7, 8 in passing. District 2 shows up when it's already a military fortress. There is a lot to uncover here precisely because the story refuses to show it to us. So what about the mid-tier districts, the ones that aren't starving but aren't training toddlers with swords either? Districts 5, 9, 10. You can almost see their Victor's villages in your head, not the empty graveyard Katniss walks through, not the packed trophy suburb of a career powerhouse, just a short street, maybe 4 or 6 houses, 2 occupied, curtains drawn. Here's the real question. What happens in a place where there are occasional winners but no full career culture? In a district that's had 1 victor in 20 years, does that mansion become a shrine or a warning sign? Do kids pass it on the way to school whispering, "That's where the games really live"? Or do parents cross the street so their children don't stare too long at the capital's favourite survivor? Because the incentive structure shifts hard when you only have 1 or 2 victors. That part matters because the entire promise of the games is supposed to be, it could be you. In District 12, no one believes that. In District 2, everyone does. But in District 6, maybe there's that one morphling victor who came home broken, and now the relationship between the district and the village is complicated. They're a living legend on paper, a cautionary tale in person. So does anyone really want their child to follow them uphill? This is where we talk about power. Not the capital's big, televised power, but the quiet kind that runs through favors and fear. A mid-tier victor doesn't just have a big house. They have direct lines to the games, to sponsors, to peacekeepers. In a place without formal careers that can make Victor's Village a shadow capital, where black market deals are arranged, where work assignments get reconsidered, where you go if you need something only the capital can provide. So imagine being 12 and watching that. The train, the parties, the rare homecoming. Do you dread the reaping more or less? Do a few ambitious families quietly train their kids anyway, hoping to be the next household on that street, while everyone else prays their name is never called? And if that's how the system works in the middle, what does it look like in the districts where the machine is running perfectly, where the village isn't half empty, where every house has a victor and children don't avoid that hill? They point to it. They call it the dream. So how do you build a district where kids line up to die for that address? Career country, where the village becomes a trophy case. In District 12, Victor's Village is a ghost suburb on a hill. In District 1, 2, and 4, it's the skyline on the brochure. Those wealthier districts are where the capital's experiment actually works. They have the food, the infrastructure, the training spaces, but more importantly, they have the story. At face value, Victor's Village is just nicer plumbing and better furniture. In the career districts, it becomes proof that the games are a valid career path, that violence has a promotion track and a retirement plan. District 1 turns tribute training into an extension of its luxury industry. You grow up polishing gemstones and swordplay in the same breath. District 2 folds it into its military identity. Stone quarries, peacekeeper bases, and obstacle courses all blur together. District 4 wraps it in seafaring pride, spears and nets framed as heritage rather than weapons. There is a lot to uncover here because the village doesn't sit outside that culture. It's the showroom floor. This is where we talk about access. Career kids have gyms, weapons, mentors who aren't drunk and traumatized beyond function. They start informal academies where 10-year-olds are already learning to throw knives and strategize alliances. So when the capital dangles Victor's Village, it isn't a random windfall. It feels like the natural reward for a lifetime of preparation, the logical endpoint of a system their parents already bought into. And the reaping reflects that. In 12, it's a cattle call with rigged odds and bowed heads. In 1, 2, and 4, it's half pageant, half draft. Kids preen in their best clothes. Families whisper about odds the way you talk about test scores. When a name is called, there's cheering, not just screaming. Why? Because the relationship between district and games has been rewritten. The village stands there, lit up and occupied, as visible proof that the capital's promise might actually pay off here. That part matters because it explains what a career tribute really is. It's not just someone who can throw a spear farther. It's a kid who has internalized the capital's values so deeply that volunteering feels honorable. They're not dragged into content, they step into it. They don't see themselves as victims of the games, they see themselves as the games. Patten interrupt for a second. Imagine a little boy in District 2 walking through Victor's Village on a school tour. He runs his hand over the stone railings, stares at the training room through a window, and thinks, one day this will be mine. That's hope, engineered and weaponized. Now snap back to Katniss, standing in her own empty street, identical houses staring back. She doesn't see a trophy case, she sees a cage with better furniture. And that's the real question. What happens when the capital tries to paste that career district dream onto someone who never believed in the promise to begin with? Why allow volunteers at all? The capital's strangest design choice. She sees a cage with better furniture, so why would the capital design the door so it can open from the inside at all? Here's the real question. If your entire regime is built on terror, why allow volunteers in the games? Why let anyone opt in, train for years, and turn state punishment into a career path? If the point is to remind every district that the capital can take your child at random, wouldn't a pure lottery be the most efficient horror? Imagine an alternate Panem for a second. No volunteering, no career academies, no mentors whispering strategy. Every year, 2 names are pulled, and there is literally nothing anyone can do about it. No tesserae math, no I'll take their place, no fantasy that your kid is special enough to win. The victors, if anyone survives, get sent home with no money, no house, no promise, just trauma and a yearly, unavoidable massacre that no one can game. That version of the games would be simpler, cleaner, more fair in its cruelty, and at face value, it sounds way scarier. So why doesn't Snow run that system? The capital spends a fortune turning the arena into a spectacle. Training scores, stylists, Caesar Flickerman interviews, sponsors placing bets. They build entire districts around producing tributes who treat the games as a sport. They hand out mansions in Victor's Village. On paper, this totally undermines their own fear narrative by letting kids opt in and build their whole identity around the arena. If you only cared about punishment, you wouldn't let Clove practice knife throws from age 6. You wouldn't let Finnick become a celebrity. You definitely wouldn't let Katniss and Peter sell a romance to the cameras and have the audience root for them. There is a lot to uncover here, because that part matters, because it shows the capital isn't just ruling through terror. This is where we talk about psychology. Pure fear burns out. People adapt. They go numb, or they snap and revolt. A system that is only random death pushes everyone toward despair, and despair isn't useful to Snow. What you actually need, if you want the games to last 75 years, is a controlled mix of fear and hope. Hope that your district might get a victor. Hope that your name won't be drawn because someone stronger will volunteer. Hope that if the worst happens, your child could come back rich in a shining house on a hill. So why even allow volunteers? Because every volunteer is proof that the capital has convinced someone the risk is worth it. Every career tribute is a walking advertisement for the opportunity of the arena. And every Victor's Village is a permanent physical dose of that hope. In the next section, we're going to cover how Snow says this out loud in his most famous line about hope, and how the layout of Victor's Village turns that philosophy into architecture Katniss can't escape. Hope on a leash, Snow's favorite weapon explained. So when Snow spells it out for Seneca Crane, the whole strategy suddenly snaps into focus. He tells him, hope. It is the only thing stronger than fear. A little hope is effective. A lot of hope is dangerous. At face value, it sounds almost generous. The president of Panem advocating for hope, that part matters because it tells you exactly what Victor's Village is for. Snow could run Panem on pure terror. No cameras, No parades, no games. Just line up potential rebels every year and execute them in the square. It would be cheaper, faster, no stylists required. So why bother with this massive televised circus? Why build arenas and hovercrafts instead of more peacekeeper barracks? The reason is that mass executions only teach you to fear punishment. The games teach you to desire it. This is where we talk about punishment turning into entertainment. When a district watches its children die, that's horror. When the capital edits it into a show, adds sponsors, interviews, and a crown at the end, suddenly there's a twisted promise attached. Someone's child comes home rich. Someone's family moves up the hill. You don't just survive the games, you win them. Victor's Village is that little hope poured into concrete. Every mansion, every feast, every victory tour banquet says, this could be you. It's close enough that kids can see the lights through the trees, but far enough they can't touch it. So instead of dreaming of ending the games, they dream of being the one the cameras love. Here's the real question. When your district is starving and the only visible path out is the arena, how many parents quietly start thinking, a volunteer isn't the worst idea? That's why Snow doesn't hate Katniss's romance story at first. Controlled hope is good television. The star-crossed lovers are still inside his narrative. The capital can replay the berries, sell it as a passionate gesture, not a political one. Every time he visits her in that perfect house in 12, he's reminding her, your defiance only exists because we broadcast it. We're going to cover how even rebellion becomes content, but the key thing is the relationship between control and chaos. Uncontrolled hope is what scares him. The moment the district stops seeing the village as a prize and starts seeing it as a cage, the whole system cracks. That's why the victory tour is scripted, why the cameras never quite turn off, why Haymitch is drowned in alcohol in a house that's technically luxurious, but functionally a cell. So the question hanging over Katniss in every scene in Victor's Village is this: when does she notice the leash? At what point does she stop treating the village, the games, and her happily ever after as separate things and realize they're all one machine built to aim her hope away from revolution and straight back into the capital's hands? The nicest prison in town. What Victor's Village really buys you. So when Katniss moves into Victor's Village, it isn't just an address change. It's a demonstration. You go from the seams, coal dust, and shared bathwater to a house where the hot water never runs out, the lights actually turn on when you flip a switch, and the pantry is so full it's almost unsettling. At face value, it's the dream upgrade. Big bed, soft couches, a fireplace that doesn't smoke you out, closets full of capital fabrics instead of one reaping dress, and a hunting jacket. But here's the real question. Who is that comfort actually for? Because the village is built on a hill for a reason. Every child in District 12 can look up and see those white painted mansions, the neat lawns, the untouched gardens. They can't walk there, but they can stare. That part matters because the capital is engineering a relationship between deprivation and aspiration. You're supposed to think, if someone from the seam can end up there, maybe I could too. Not, why do those houses exist when the rest of us are starving? And the rewards don't stop at the front door. When a victor comes home, the entire district gets pulled into the celebration. There are parades, feasts, banners, music. The victory tour turns one person's survival into a community festival. For one night, the games feel generous, the mayor makes speeches, the cameras linger on cheering crowds, and suddenly the arena isn't just a graveyard, it's the reason your district got meat on the table. We're going to cover the food parcels because they're crucial to Snow's strategy. The capital sends extra grain and oil as a reward to the victor's district. It's not enough to fix systemic hunger, but it's enough that people notice. If your children went to bed less hungry the year your district won, how hard is it to tell them we have to root for our tributes? The games become a terrible lottery where you're not just betting on survival, you're betting on rations. This is where we talk about visual contrast as propaganda. The cameras love a before and after. Starving tribute in a shapeless dress, then the same person in a gleaming kitchen, well-fed, styled, and safe on paper. There is a lot to uncover here because that edited glow-up sells the promise of social nobility through murder. You don't see the nightmares or the alcohol on Hamish's table. You see the marble countertops. And that's the capital's real win. The system teaches you to hope for winning, not for ending the games. Victor's Village whispers that obedience, good interviews, good ratings, the right kind of story can buy you out of misery. Even if the odds are terrible, the mansion on the hill proves the reward is real enough to keep you playing. So when does Katniss realize that even this nicest prison in town is bait, not mercy? The Reaping Edit. How Katniss's sacrifice becomes capital content. She steps into Victor's Village thinking she finally beat the system. But to see how early the capital had already won, you have to rewind. Go back to the square. Go back to the reaping. Before Katniss ever touches a mansion key, she's already living inside the capital's rulebook. Tesserae is the perfect example. You're told it's charity, food in exchange for extra entries. At face value, that sounds like a cruel lottery tax. But here's the real question. Why does a government design hunger relief that literally multiplies your chances of sending your child to die? Katniss understands the relationship immediately. She doesn't argue with the system. She just does the math and signs up anyway. That part matters because it shows you her survival pattern. The fence is supposed to be electrified. She hunts under it. The hob is illegal. She trades there. The rules are fixed in the capital's favor, so her response is never revolution. It's workarounds. She bends the games she's given, but she does not imagine breaking them. Not yet. So when Prim's name is drawn, it isn't just a plot twist. It's a psychological victory for the capital. You're watching the gentlest, least threatening child in District 12. The one person Katniss has tried to keep untouched by this system, get yanked on stage by random chance. The message is brutal and simple. There is no safety. Not goodness, not youth, not low profile. Anyone can be content. Then Katniss moves. No plan, no speech, just that raw horse, I volunteer. And here is where we're going to cover the edit, not the moment itself. In the square, it's chaos. She's shaking, Prim is screaming, Katniss can barely stand. But the cameras don't care that she's terrified. They care that she looks brave. This is where we talk about spectacle over reality. The capital doesn't broadcast the smell of coal dust or the way Katniss's voice breaks when she says goodbye. They broadcast the wide shot of a sister throwing herself on the altar. They cut the crowd's gasp. They frame it as noble sacrifice, a heroic origin story that promises a thrilling season of games. Ratings gold. Pattern interrupt. Imagine you're in the Capitol right now, watching that reaping on a giant screen. Do you see oppression, or do you see the best episode opener in years? The costume team is already thinking about fire. Caesar Flickerman is rehearsing questions. Parents in the stands are whispering, "What a brave girl," while their kids argue over whether she'll beat the careers. Snap back to Katniss, though, and the realization starts to sting. Every step onto the train, every makeover, every interview with Peter isn't just survival anymore. It's content. She's not just a tribute. She's a character. And if the Capitol can turn her worst day into their favorite story, what does that say about what winning will actually look like? Training, scores, and stylists. The arena you don't see, and then you hit the part of the games that doesn't look deadly at all. It's not the bloodbath, it's the makeover. Because once Katniss steps into training, she realizes the real arena starts before anyone ever touches a weapon. At face value, those sessions are about skill. Archery lanes, spear racks, knots, camouflage. But here's the real question. If it's really about survival, why did the stylists' scores and interviews get more screen time than the actual training itself? This is where we talk about Cinna. He's technically her stylist. In practice, he's her first coach in Capitol performance theory. Instead of dressing her in coal dust, he turns her into the girl on fire, a walking special effect from a poor mining district that suddenly looks expensive. There is a lot to uncover here. Katniss doesn't choose that image. Her body, her clothes, even the way she holds herself in the chariot are all scripted. The Capitol sees a costume. The districts see a symbol. Katniss sees that she's become a product. That part matters because it teaches her the new rule. It's not enough to stay alive. You have to stay interesting. The training scores drive that home. On paper, they're a neutral metric. An 11 for Katniss should just mean good with a bow. But the game makers aren't handing out grades. They're writing log lines. A high score doesn't just predict survival. It creates hype, tells the audience which tributes to bet on, and quietly decides who gets sponsors and who dies off screen. You can feel the shift. One number, flashed on a screen, rewrites her relationship to every other tribute. Notice how the careers react. They don't say, "She'll be hard to kill." They say, "She's competition." Competition for what? Attention, gifts, narrative space. And sponsors are where performance stops being metaphorical and starts being literal oxygen. Katniss can hunt, track, and climb. None of that matters if the Capitol audience is bored. To get medicine, food, or burn cream, she has to cry on cue in Caesar Flickerman's chair, sell a star-crossed romance with Peter, and expose just enough vulnerability that rich strangers feel a pang of hope and open their wallets. Is she in love? Is she acting? The question stops being, what does she feel? And becomes, what will play well on camera? We're going to cover the fallout of that later, but the seed is planted here. Even her most private emotions are subject to market testing. And the cruel twist is that Katniss thinks, in the arena, that using those tools beats the system. She leans into the girl on fire, leans into the kiss, leans into the berries. It works. She survives, but the Capitol is taking notes. The same performances that saved her will be recycled, remixed, and weaponized as propaganda long after she believes she's outplayed them. The games end. The show doesn't. And the moment she realizes that is still coming, berries, tors, and roses, the moment winning starts to feel like losing. the games end. The cameras don't. You think the Nightlock is the moment you beat them. 2 tributes, 1 district, holding poisonous berries up to the sky and forcing the capital to choose between a double suicide and a broken narrative. At face value, that's the ultimate power move, right? You weaponize their own rules and walk out with Peter together. But here's the real question. What story survives once the arena shuts down? Because the capital does not air, we were about to lose our finale to a poison berry glitch. They air, he loved her so much he'd rather die than live without her. The double suicide threat becomes the greatest romantic gesture in Panem history. Not rebellion, relationship content. There is a lot to uncover here. The same stunt that in Katniss's head proves she's outsmarted the system becomes the proof the system uses that its love story worked. Caesar Flickerman doesn't ask why she challenged capital authority. He asks how it felt to realize she loved Peter. That part matters because it shows you the edit. The capital doesn't erase the berries, it reframes them. It keeps the spectacle and strips out the threat. So when she steps off the train into Victor's village, you're expecting freedom, space, safety. Instead, you get this eerie suburb on a hill, 12 perfect houses for a district that's only ever produced 2 other victors. The mansion is warm, stocked, humming with power, and it feels wrong. Too big for one girl from the seam, too quiet for a supposed prize. Fancy ovens for a girl who grew up cooking squirrel over a fire. A study for someone with time to think instead of time to hunt. We're going to cover the political purpose of that architecture more later. But in this moment, it's already doing its job. It separates her from the seam. It turns her into a display piece. And then Snow walks in. This is where we talk about the leash tightening. He appears in her supposedly private kitchen without guards, announced, smelling of roses and blood, a walking reminder that the games are just one branch of his power. He doesn't threaten her with a firing squad. He threatens her with ratings. Her love story, he says, has to be convincing enough to calm the districts. Not just on stage, at home, on the tour, forever. So why is that more terrifying than a pack of mutts? Because suddenly the Victory House is exposed as another camera angle. The promise of safety is conditional. If she fails to sell hope to the districts, her family pays. Her hunting grounds, her people, her entire district become leverage. And this is the first time she really understands the rule no one says out loud. The capital doesn't need her dead to win. It just needs her on cue. So what happens when the victor the capital owns has already started to belong to the districts instead? Owned in victory. How the capital turns defiance into a franchise. So what happens when the victor the capital owns has already started to belong to the districts instead? You send her on tour. The victory tour is supposed to be the reward phase. At face value, it's the thank you lap, the promise that every district will celebrate you as their hero. But here's the real question. Why does the capital immediately drag a traumatized teenager through every place that just watched her kill and almost be killed? Because it's a forced encore. Katniss has to stand in front of grieving families and repeat carefully scripted lines about honor and sacrifice. She's ordered to resell the same star-crossed lover's story that was supposed to be her escape hatch. Every speech is a rerun of the games. Remember Rue, remember Marvel, remember that the capital gave this all meaning. You think you survived the arena, then they make you tour the highlights reel. And it doesn't end when the train pulls back into Victor's village. This is where we talk about the lifelong contract hidden inside that mansion. Winning the games doesn't retire you, it promotes you. Every victor becomes mandatory mentor, annual commentator, recurring special guest. You go back to the capital every year, parade through those streets, sit in those green rooms. Your job is to train the next kids who will probably die while you smile beside Caesar Flickerman and explain their strengths. There is a lot to uncover here, but the simple version is brutal. You are never allowed to stop being content. And then the story gives you Finnick Odair. Finnick is what happens when the system really works. A golden victor from District 4, adored in the capital, draped in nets and sugar cubes. On screen, he's effortless charm. Off screen, he's being sold, literally, as a capital plaything, his body and trauma traded for secrets and survival. That part matters because it shows you the end game. Even the most beloved victor is still inventory. Katniss looks at Finnick and sees her future if she plays along. Not death, branding. The awkward silences on the train. Peter's hurt when he realizes their romance was part performance. Haymitch passed out with a bottle. Everything can be cut, scored, and reframed. 1 year, Katniss is the brave girl on fire. The next, she's the dangerous agitator who needs to calm the districts down. Same footage, different edit. Quick pause here. How often do you see this outside Panem? Reality shows turning breakdowns into cliffhangers, influencers turning hospital bracelets into thumbnails. Why is it so easy to watch real pain as content and then scroll away? Snap back to Katniss on that train window, watching the districts blur past. She starts to understand the worst part of winning. Even her rebellion, even her grief, is just another season to renew. And the Capitol has already booked her for the next one. Book versus movie village. What the cameras don't show you. And that next season, it starts in a place that's supposed to be the prize. Victor's village. On the page, District 12's village is weirdly wrong from the first walkthrough. You get those empty streets, 12 identical houses, and only 3 actually lived in. No kids playing, no market noise. Just wind on the roof tiles and the hum of appliances no one asked for. At face value, it's luxury, hot water, full cupboards, a closet that refills itself. But the way Katniss describes it, you can feel she's been exiled from the only ecosystem where she knew how to survive. She goes from bartering squirrels at the Hob to staring at a marble kitchen she doesn't know how to use. Her mother and Prim love the safety. She paces, listens to the silence, and has nightmares in a bed that's too soft. That part matters because in the book, the village isn't a reward, it's a controlled habitat. A zoo enclosure perched above the district, where the victor can see everyone, and everyone can see the victor, but the relationship is now one way. On screen though, the village reads almost cozy. Clean lines, soft snow, golden hour lighting. You get those domestic shots of Peter baking in the kitchen, Katniss coming home to fresh bread, the two of them sharing a table that looks almost normal. We're going to cover why that matters, because the films lean hard into the romance and domesticity of that space. It becomes the backdrop for can these two damaged teens build a life together? More than, this is an elegant prison built by the Capitol. Here's the real question. What gets softened to make that work? In the books, Snow's presence in the village is suffocating. He appears in her brand new living room, smelling of blood and roses, reminding you that if he can walk through that door unannounced, there is nowhere Katniss can actually be off camera. Every window could hide a lens. Every phone line is a wire back to the games. The movies condense that. We still get the iconic visit, but the ongoing sense of surveillance is dialed down. Katniss's constant nightmares, her habit of hiding in an empty house when the fence is electrified, the way she jumps at the idea of microphones in the walls, most of that never makes it to screen. You see a traumatized girl, yes. You don't fully feel the rigged system she knows she's still trapped in, so the timing of her realization shifts. In the books, the Capitol already won moment hits early and sharp, tied to Snow's first visit and the Victory Tour ultimatum. Sell the romance or watch your district burn. By the time the Quarter Quell is announced, she's not surprised the rules changed. She's surprised it took them this long. In the films, that same realization gets pushed closer to the Quell itself when the announcement lands and the supposed safety of Victor's village is revoked on camera. The village looks peaceful until the plot needs it not to be. And that brings us to the next step, pinpointing the exact scene, book and movie, where Katniss finally understands her real job isn't surviving the arena, it's performing the role the Capitol wrote for her, or burning for refusing. The moment the camera turns, Katniss's quiet, final realization. So when does she actually know the Capitol has already won? Not when the cannon fires, not even when the arena explodes. It's quieter than that. It's the moment she realizes the camera never turns off. We've had a few candidate moments already. The volunteer scene feels huge. Prim's name, Katniss screaming, the stumble up the steps. At face value, that's the day the system closes in. Her pain is broadcast, edited, replayed. Then you have the berries, the big defiance. Except the Capitol packages that too. Star-crossed lovers, tragic near suicide, ratings gold. Snow's first visit to Victor's village, that part matters because it proves her new mansion is just an extension of the stage. And the Victory Tour locks it in. Every speech, every kiss, with Peter, a script written under threat of district-wide execution. All of those moments are pressure points. But here's the real question. When does Katniss stop thinking in terms of survival and start understanding she's content? I'd argue the true Capitol already won moment hits when she becomes the Mockingjay and realizes even rebellion is being shot, scored, and distributed. In District 13, she walks into a new arena. Cressida's lens, Fulvia's slogans, we're going to cover the war, they tell her, but only if she cries on cue, sings in the ruins of 12, kisses Peter in a hospital bed at the right time. Her grief over Rue, her love for Peter, even her PTSD. None of it is off limits. Both Snow and Coin understand the same rule. If it isn't on camera, it might as well not exist. This is where we talk about Victor's village as the symbol of that trap. In 12, it's supposed to be home, a promise that the games are over. But Snow's white roses show up in her kitchen, turning her safe space into a horror prop. Later, after the bombing, the village is the only thing left standing, a pristine set surrounded by ash. Then in 13, she gets a different home. Concrete rooms wired for broadcasts, hidden mics in strategy meetings, propo filmed in destroyed districts. There is a lot to uncover here, but the pattern is simple. She never again has a room that isn't also a backdrop. And underneath all of this is the hidden rule no one says out loud. You can win the arena and still lose to the Capitol. Because the real game isn't who walks out alive, it's who controls the story. That's the reason Victor's mentor, Tor, perform talents. That's the reason Snow and Coin fight over Katniss's image more than her bow. So what does it mean if even Katniss Everdeen, the girl on fire, the supposed symbol of hope, can't escape being turned into a product? What does that say about our own relationship to stories, to systems, to platforms that profit from our outrage and our pain? And if the camera never really turns off in Panem, are we sure it ever turns off for us? Because the next step is asking whether Katniss ever truly gets that camera back, or if someone else just changes what channel we're watching. Your turn in the arena. So if the channel never really changes, what does winning even mean in Panem? We've gone from the origin of Victor's village, through career culture and volunteering, all the way to that moment Katniss realizes the Capitol's real power isn't mutts or hovercrafts, it's the edit. At face value, the mansion on the hill, the feast days, the direct phone line to the Capitol all look like rewards. But there is a lot to uncover here when you trace the path. Tesserae that teach you the price of survival, a reaping that turns your worst day into a broadcast, an arena that turns your grief into a rating spike. Back then, Katniss is already playing by rigged rules, hunting beyond the fence, trading at the hob, taking Tesserae because her district has no other choice. She knows the system is fixed, she just thinks the win condition is staying alive and keeping Prim fed. So why the change? Because the games show her that survival isn't the final score. The real question becomes, who owns the story of how you survived? This is where we talk about the reaping. Prim's name is drawn once. Katniss volunteers, and in one move the Capitol gets everything it wants. A tragic sister narrative, a brave sacrifice, a perfect clip for Caesar Flickerman to replay. The Capitol doesn't have to invent a hero, it just has to frame one. That part matters, because from that moment, Katniss is no longer just a girl from District 12. She's content. In the arena, the pattern only deepens. Training scores, flaming dresses, sponsors judging you from balconies. You can be the best shot in the games and still lose if your narrative doesn't sell. Then, after she wins, Victor's village, the victory tour, Snow in her living room, all prove that the contract never ends. The promise was freedom. The reality is a lifetime of sequels. So when does she really understand the Capitol has already won? Is it the first time she sees her own kiss with Peter replayed on a giant screen? Is it Snow's warning that her romance has to convince not just the Capitol but the districts too? Or is it later when even the rebellion turns her into the Mockingjay, a different costume, same camera? Here's the real question for you. Is there any version of Katniss's story where she actually wins without being used by someone, Snow, Coin, the Capitol audience, or the districts desperate for hope? If the games are built so every act of defiance becomes another episode, what does victory even look like? And once you see that, it's hard not to think about our own media arenas. Whose pain becomes a trending story? Who gets turned into a symbol, a meme, a narrative we replay because it makes us feel something for a second? We're going to cover more of those hidden rules, the Tesserae math, the Quarter Quell rule hacks, the secret economics of Capitol luxury in future deep dives. For now, I want to hear from you. What's your personal, the Capitol already won moment from the trilogy? The berries, the Quarter Quell card, the epilogue. Drop your scene, your reason, your read in the comments. And if you want to keep pulling apart how these games work, make sure you're here for the next round in the arena.